Will call the public hearing to order with respect to zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 3150-2015. I'm just going to read out the process for the public hearing to you, and then we will have staff introduce the elements with respect to the bylaw. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 890 of the Local Government Act to consider zoning bylaw amendment number 3150-2015, a bylaw to add marijuana operation to the list of prohibited uses in all zones. At this hearing, any person present who believes that his or her interest is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given the opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the bylaw. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the bylaw should, at the appropriate time, commence your address to council and to the meeting by clearly stating your name and your address. Then you will give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Members of council may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens or with each other. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected by this bylaw shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. After the hearing is concluded, the council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council deems proper to the representations made at this hearing. I thank you for your cooperation, and we will begin the process. So I would ask Ms. Robertson if you could go through the documents with respect to the amended bylaw amendment, and then also we'll go on to correspondence. Okay,
thank you, Your Worship. Just a little bit of a preamble before we get into the part that's specific to the bylaw to give a bit of context. Marijuana is actually governed through criminal law via the Federal Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. And this act states that cannabis is a prohibited substance, and under no law is it permissible for a person to go to any sort of premise, commercial or otherwise, to purchase marijuana even if they are an authorized user. This includes storefront dispensaries and compassion clubs who have been given non-profit status by the provincial government. The exception in this act related to licensed producers is the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulation, and this was enacted on April 14th, 2014, which authorizes licensed producers to distribute the product via secure shipping with child-resistant packaging. It's not distributed through a retail store. So although the federal government has recently indicated that it plans to make marijuana legal, it will be creating a federal, provincial, territorial task force in order to seek input from experts in public health, substance abuse, and law enforcement to design a new system of strict marijuana sales and distribution with federal and provincial excise taxes applied. Until local governments know what that law will look like, the proposed zoning amendment before council would ensure that once the federal government introduces that legislation, council can take a measured approach in considering appropriate regulations and locations for this type of business by either, number one, considering applications on a case-by-case basis through a zoning amendment application process. And the advantage to this way would be that the surrounding property owners would be notified and given an opportunity to comment through a public hearing process. The second way that it can be looked at is by revising the zoning bylaw, which staff are currently working on, to permit medical marijuana dispensaries under specific conditions. So for example, a minimum distance from schools. Although there would be one opportunity for a public hearing if this was the option that council chose in the future, there would be no specific notification for the surrounding property owners. And it's also important to note that existing bong shops would not be affected by this proposed amendment, and it also is not targeting personal use.
Okay, and thank you for that. Moving to the correspondence sheet, was there any correspondence received with respect to this public hearing?
Yes, we did receive one email from Alex Robb, who I believe is here this evening and may want to have an opportunity to speak. He's with Trees Dispensary. And his email, just sort of to synopsize it, is that adding marijuana operation as a list of prohibited uses in all zones would affect their chain of medical cannabis dispensaries, as they would like to open a storefront dispensary in Duncan. I have circulated the email to all of council as well as to everyone in the audience, but
It was
if
included in
it
our
was included in the package, but if there is a desire for me to read it out, I can do so.
Okay. So that moves us to the public input process. So I'm going to ask for a first time if there's anyone who would like to speak with respect to their views on this zoning bylaw amendment. And if you would, you could go to the podium and provide your name and your address with respect of the community you live in, not your specific street address. We like to maintain people's privacy in that respect. So is there anyone who would like to address council with respect to the bylaw amendment? Everyone will get it. Everyone will get a chance. And I do appreciate that it's that public speaking isn't always everyone's first favorite thing. So just be relaxed and be yourself and give us your views and be open to questions. We may ask questions.
So my name's Isaac Greenwood, and I'm actually asking.
If you could just speak a little clearly into the microphone and just give your name and where you live.
Sure. My name's Isaac Greenwood. I live in Victoria. I work in Duncan, and I'm actually asking this question on behalf of a friend of mine. And he was curious if the bylaw could be referred to staff to determine whether it conflicts with charter and how best to address jurisdictional issues.
I'm going to, we don't normally answer questions. We're here to hear the particular views.
Okay.
It would be, I'm not sure if administrative staff would like to answer the question with respect to the vetting, legal vetting of bylaw amendments. Ms. Robertson?
Maybe if you could just ask the question again?
Sure. This isn't my question, so I'm not sure
okay.
I can really handle a follow-up, but it was asked if the bylaw could be referred to staff to determine whether it conflicts with the charter and how best to address jurisdictional issues.
The bylaws do not conflict with the community charter, but the community charter is a provincial piece of legislation that governs local government. This is a federal issue, and federal law trumps provincial and local law. So federally, it's still considered illegal.
Just for clarity, I think the charter question that you're asking is respect to the federal Charter of Rights and Freedom. Is that?
I believe so.
Okay, so I think he was speaking to that.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the community charter.
No, a little bigger.
Yeah, the piece of federal legislation that I referred to was actually the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulation, which is the federal act, and that's what it states specifically. So it does not conflict with it. I'm actually quoting their federal legislation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Sorry. Hi, my name's Justin Liu. I'm from West Vancouver. I'm the operator of We Medical Dispensary. We have 3 dispensaries here on Vancouver Island. We were hoping that Duncan would be our 4th, but I just kind of want to clarify our position. So basically, we were looking to open up this dispensary not to sell medicinal cannabis out of it. What we're doing is qualifying and educating patients that do come in and educating them, saying, you know, if you have arthritis, cancer, chronic back pain, we wanted to specify specific strains of marijuana that would fit your need. You know, we didn't want to come in here, sell marijuana, and ruffle everyone's feathers. I'm from Vancouver. We do this as a full nonprofit. In the financial markets. Basically, I did this because I used to play football, and I hurt my back very, very badly. And I almost got addicted to codeine, and medicinal marijuana changed my life. Since then, I was the 2nd largest producing broker at Mackey Research Capital, which is kind of 2nd largest private firm. And yeah, that's basically why we decided to open it. We just wanted to come here, educate everyone, and I called the mayor's office. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a response. I know you're a very busy guy. And that's basically it. If you guys have any questions, I'm here now. I'm more than happy to answer anything that you guys
Is there
want to
anyone
ask.
from council who would like to pose a question?
I don't think so.
Okay. Right, okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to call for a second time if there's anyone who would like to address council with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment.
Jean Cardno from Cardino Shoes. My question is, if this is still a controlled substance, why would it require a facility that would be open to many people opening maybe a shop? And why wouldn't it be sold in regular pharmacies? So why does it require its own?
At this point in time, under the existing federal legislation, my understanding is that the distribution of it for medical purposes is done through licensed brokers to registered users, and it is done by direct delivery to those medical users. So there are no provisions yet, and this is the challenge, I think, that we have, is that there is no different federal legislation that allows for it to be sold in any kind of dispensary, including pharmacies or anything.
Because my concern is that if you get one shop downtown, you get more than one. How do you limit it? Because what would the nature of the downtown become? Do you need a prescription for the drug? Can somebody go off the street and buy it? So, you know, wondering about the ramifications of the downtown.
Okay.
With
That's the purpose of this public hearing, to hear your
so
concerns.
my concerns
Okay.
for the nature of the downtown.
Okay. Are there any questions from council with respect to this? Councillor Jackson?
Actually,
please
if
use
you do have some concerns around that, Jean, it would be very helpful if you actually wrote them down, because at some point, council's going to have to come up with a bylaw. And it would be like liquor stores. You know, you don't want them close to the school or close to the community center, or maybe we only want it in a certain kind of a zone. We haven't come to that yet. But if you were to write down your concerns and send them to council, then we would be taking all of that into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we won't at this point. I'll go through and ask for anyone else who wants to make a presentation to the public, and then we can go back to people who have spoken previously.
Yes, my name is Bill Clark from Shawnigan Lake. I work here in Duncan. I myself have been fighting a grow-op in Shawnigan Lake for the past 3 years in my neighborhood. And we've been through RCMP, all the bylaws, Health Canada. My issue is not here to disagree with the purpose of medical marijuana. I agree totally with this fellow's here, with his plight and his concerns. My concern is the act of getting a license. I can go to Victoria tomorrow and get a license and get a prescription. I have no need to have a prescription. I don't understand why illegal substance that it is today, why we are even here discussing this until it's proven through the federal government, that the federal government comes up with a plan. I don't understand why we're even here discussing this. My concern is for neighborhoods, like my own neighborhood has been divided over a grow-op that has been fathered in by the bylaws, by the CVRD, and I realize this is the city of Duncan. I'm here just observing. I just wanted to make my point clear that we need to spend some time and source this out. This is a big boondoggle in the federal government, right from the very top. There's been some major mistakes made here. Again, I'm all for medical marijuana and what it does. I've done my research. It's a good thing. The way it's being handled is not a good thing. And I think we really have to stop, back up a few steps, and have a look at how we're addressing this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for a third and final time with respect to anyone making a new presentation. Yes? And again, for the record, just state your name and where you live.
I'm Sarah Campbell. I live in Duncan. And again, I just found out about this meeting tonight, so I apologize. I'm not 100% prepared. But I just want to speak on behalf of medical marijuana patients. I think that it has been found by the government that they have a right to this medicine, and we know that it helps people, and that That was in 2000, and it took the government 14 years to come up with a licensed producer model. And we know that that licensed producer model is not actually working for many patients, and that's why you see what you're seeing in Victoria, you see what you're seeing in Vancouver, Toronto as well, across the country. People are looking to help themselves and help their families and help their loved ones find access to this medicine that is helping them. And I think that it's really tough to say that you can't force people with an issue like this to just sit and wait. And that's what took so long. In 2000, when the first compassion clubs opened up in the country, they did so in an illegal environment because they felt that it was necessary. And here we are today. We're not there yet, I agree, but we're moving towards a system that works. And as a businesswoman, I think that you often need to try things. You need to see a business in action, see a project in action, before you can actually make decisions around what's working and what's not working. I'm not sure when the bylaws intended to come into play, but I would ask you to consider the residents of Duncan, as this fellow and as the Trees Dispensary has said, there's people who are driving all over the island to find this medicine, and if it's something that the council can come up with a reasonable set of regulations, looking to Victoria perhaps, and to see what they're coming up with. I think that you'd be helping your citizens. You maybe would even be opening up the potential for small businesses here to sustain themselves. I mean, that's a whole other world. It's just a small craft business economy that could actually help citizens here in the city. I think that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And so is there anyone who would like to ask a question with respect to this presentation? Okay, hearing none. I understand you wanted to speak again. If there's no one else, then for a final and third time that would like to make a presentation.
So a couple things I'd like to address is our rules as a dispensary, we only serve people that can show proof of need. So basically, they need to have a doctor's note or existing prescription medication that fits some of our ailments. Otherwise, we will not serve. I was the first person to open up in Port Alberni, and the city council chose to regulate and keep me there. In fact, why I did it is because when you go to a doctor, and I've actually invested in multiple LPs. I've done site tours. I put hundreds of thousands of dollars actually into LPs as an investment through the stock market, but I realized myself that they don't work. I can go to a doctor today and I can get just about any pill I want, but they will not prescribe me marijuana. And if you go to Port Alberni, you talk to anyone there, they go to their family doctor, they will in fact drop that patient from their list, where it's already so hard to find a family doctor if they ask for marijuana. In fact, they have what you call a two-strike rule, that if you ask twice, you're out. And that's why I feel it's so important that all communities, especially smaller communities, do have access to medicinal marijuana. And yeah, if there's any other questions, again, I'm more than happy to answer anything.
Okay. Councillor Bell?
You have piqued my curiosity. I'm just wondering about your staff then. You have some criteria and they're trained, I'm assuming. So what is their medical background, or how do they pick the right disease for the right strain of marijuana? I know about compassionate clubs. Actually, I'm in the nonprofit world and I've worked in mental health and addiction for many years. I've seen governments give drugs that are not tested. I've seen professionals that give drugs that are not appropriate. So I'm just curious, what are your staff at the front line? What do they do for when they diagnose what their ailment is and then diagnose what the right treatment is? What are their qualifications for doing that?
Basically, because there's no, in fact, science or university course administered already for medicinal marijuana, although UVic has just launched one, what we do is we administer our own course to all our employees before they're able to work. So typically, what we do is we match certain ailments to certain strains of marijuana. And as we bring in new strains of marijuana, as you can see, our menu is always evolving. We list the ailments underneath which strain. So we do a clear printout showing if you were to have Crohn's disease, this specific strain would be good for you. So in essence, we do the research, we get specific people to do the research, and then we relay it on to a next level. Unfortunately, because it's such a new form of medicine. There is no such thing as having, a bachelor's or a PhD in marijuana. A lot of the people we do hire, though, have had background in medicinal marijuana or marijuana as a whole previous to this. I will never hire anyone that hasn't consumed marijuana or has been in the industry for at least 2 years.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Can I do one follow-up?
Follow-up question, yes.
So do you ever rule somebody out as, we tried marijuana as a medicine for this particular thing and it's not working? So when do we refer out to something else?
I look at marijuana as maybe not so much the very first thing that a patient would try. The way I look at it is if traditional medicine doesn't work for you, because of the very few side effects that marijuana has, that's when we would like to come in and suggest it to patients. We're not actively going out and soliciting patients saying, marijuana is the right form of medicine for you. What our approach is, if, Tylenol 3 isn't working for you, come give us a try, because maybe this is a better alternative.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to I've asked for the final time. Is there any other individual who would like to get up and give their views to council with respect to this? Sir, just give your name and where you live.
Hello, my name is Ben Hinton. I'm presently living in Cedar, but I was born and raised in Cowichan Valley all my life. Yep. Hinton, Hinton. I'd just like to discuss this purely from a commerce standpoint. I represent Trees Dispensaries. We opened up our Nanaimo location 1 year ago. At that time, I think there was probably under 10 people employed in the Nanaimo area for marijuana dispensaries. And now at this time, I think we're closing on 80 or 90 employees. So that's 80 or 90 people who are presently working now in Nanaimo, paying their rent, paying their bills because of this industry. So purely from an economical standpoint, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
You guys have any questions for me?
Are there any questions?
That's good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I've given a fair opportunity for all of those to give their input and their views to council. So, pardon? Oh, would you like to speak again?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Sarah Campbell again from Duncan. Just to answer Michelle's question about medication when it's not working. And I think that traditionally, compassion clubs in particular, that word compassion clubs as opposed to dispensaries, they are meant to work in tandem with your doctor. So when a patient comes to a compassion club, that compassion club has a history of this person's medical history, and the doctor is involved, and they essentially work in tandem. The doctors are not cannabis experts, the pharmacists are not cannabis experts. These folks at the compassion clubs are, and so I think that is what the legitimate clubs have been trying to do, is really work together with a health care provider.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed for zoning bylaw amendment number 3150-2015. So we will be convening a special meeting of council